We're now well into the first week of February 2015, so I'm doing another monthly wrap-up and perspective and update video where I'll talk about what we had going on in January and what we've got coming up in February. There are a few things that I would like to put out there right away before I talk about January, just to keep them fresh in people's mind and maybe give you a little teaser about what we've got to talk about for February, but some of these are things that are ongoing as well. So I've got 3 free events in the local area, 1 down in the city in New York City, and 2 here in Kingston in the Hudson Valley of New York. So if you're in the area, consider popping by for those. Put them on your calendar. I'll talk about those in the February section. I'm still continuing and expanding the tutoring and the philosophical counseling. So if you want to have a one-on-one engagement with me where you're studying philosophy, you can do that either through Google Helpouts, or since it's not available for some people or not convenient for some people, you can do that directly via Skype with me, and I'll put more information and talk a bit more about that in the February section. Philosophical counseling, that's going along quite well. I'm getting more clients for that. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can email me at greg@reason.io, or you can follow the information that I'm going to provide here as well. What else do I want to put on your radar? I started the Existentialism of Palermo class, and I'll talk a bit more about that in the February section. It's the time for enrolling for that class is over, but we'll have another section of it opening up down the line for those who missed it the first time. So on to January. A lot going on in January. I did 2 public lectures. One was in the new Understanding Anger lecture series that's going to run the entire year of 2015. You might remember that I did a similar lecture series with the Kingston Library over 2014 on existentialist thought called Glimpses into Existence, and that started to get a lot of regulars coming in and a lot of new people towards the end. So we're getting a larger space for this, and I'm getting better about doing the public promotion stuff that I really need to do. This one is focused on anger as it's depicted and discussed in philosophy, literature, and religious texts from the ancient period all the way through the late Middle Ages. So we began with Greek tragedy and epic, Homer, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and we're going to finish up towards the very end with Chaucer and Dante, and we're going to do a lot of stuff in between. So in January, we did, like I said, Greek epic and tragedy. You can see the video for that, and we'll have a lot more coming up in that series. I also did an evening lecture at the Unitarian Universalist community of the Catskills, which hosted a talk that I gave on Rainer Maria Rilke and his poetry and his letters and his views on the divine, and that was quite a good event as well. Very icy, snowy evening, but we had a pretty good sized crowd of 20 who came out to brave the cold. Had a lot of useful meetings, and I'll probably talk more about those in later update videos when they start bearing their fruit. I did some philosophical counseling, some tutoring over the last month. I did a lot of online teaching. I had 3 Marist classes going at the beginning of January. Thankfully, 2 of them finished up because they were 4-week intensive ethics classes. 2 of them finished up about mid-month, and it took me about a week to recover from the energy that I'd had to pour into having 75 students in a compressed period. Where 2 of those classes are doing 16 weeks worth of work in 4 weeks, and one of the classes, which still is going on right now, is doing 16 weeks in 10 weeks. So that took a lot of time and work. For the 10-week class, I've been developing all brand new content for that, and down the line I'll probably offer that in some other format in a public way, so that people who aren't enrolled in Marist can actually follow along with that. I also took an online class towards the end of the month with a new platform. It's based in Britain, and it was hosted by the University of Birmingham, the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtue, I think it's called, Character and Ethics, and it was on character education. And it had much more application to the British context than necessarily to an American context, but it was quite good. It's nice to be a student sometimes rather than having to be the professor. I was coming into the class as somebody who does virtue ethics work as an expert, for a living. But, it's nice to be able to sit back and see what other people are doing. I learned a few things. It was really interesting seeing what my fellow participants were writing in the discussion boards. And I actually did a sort of review of the class itself in my blog, Virtue Ethics Digest. So if you're interested in that, you can see that. I'll put the link to it there. Video work, I only did work in my main channel this month. I didn't get around to adding more content to the critical thinking, logic, and argumentation channel, and just in part because I didn't have enough time. And I was doing so much video work for the Worldviews and Values class. But I did bring out a bunch of half-hour Hegel videos midway through the month. We are now right smack dab in the middle of the new section, Sense Certainty, so, that's kind of cool that we're getting that far. I did shoot a lot of Worldviews and Values videos, and I've released some of them. I think some of the Plato videos I was still releasing in January. I know I released quite a few on Epictetus and quite a few on Boethius. Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy is not a text that I've done videos on before, so that's brand new content. The Epictetus, some of it overlaps with some earlier videos, but quite a bit of it is new as well. Writing, I was able to get some writing done. One of the things I've wanted to do this year is really start blogging again in earnest, something that I did in the past that I really enjoyed. I have, right now, if you count the half-hour Hegel, 5 blogs. There's a main blog, Erexis Dianoetike, and then there's 4 more specialized blogs. There's Virtue Ethics Digest, obviously about virtue ethics, Sadler's Existentialism Updates, obviously about existentialism, Heavy Metal Philosopher, much more music-oriented. Sometimes the stuff in there isn't even strictly philosophical, it's more about heavy metal. And then Half Hour Hegel, very, very focused on that series, a blog that I created in order to curate the videos, because they're, we're now at number 40, so there's quite a few of them. But I've been blogging regularly in those. I at least got 1 entry done last month for each of them. I've been working on revising and expanding my paper that I gave on Anselm, Mercy, Justice, and God in Cur Deus Homo, because that's going to get published fairly soon. I've been working on some Aristotle stuff as well, and I'm still working on the sample chapter for the Good Life textbook. Didn't get as much done on that as I wanted to. In that one, I'm writing about money, specifically, making money, spending money, saving money, all those sorts of things. So that's what went on during January. You can tell it was a pretty packed month. Now on to what we've got coming up in February. So, like I said, we have 3 public events that are actually free of charge. So if you're in the area and you've got free time, and you'd like to, attend these, come on over and do so. If you do so, by the way, introduce yourself to me afterwards if I don't already know you. So we have the next Understanding Anger lecture. That is actually coming up on the 14th, on Valentine's Day. You might say, well, why are you talking about anger on Valentine's Day? What better day, because somebody's going to get angry at somebody, but we're actually doing it in the morning. If the smarter thing would actually be to do it on the day after Valentine's Day, after people have screwed up. But this is actually not about Valentine's Day at all. I'm just joking about that. It's really focused on anger in the Jewish scriptures. So we're looking at, the wisdom literature. We're looking at some of the narratives, particularly the first murder, Cain and Abel. And we're looking at depictions of divine wrath in that. That's what we're focusing on this month. So that's about an hour of lecture, which is always, interpenetrated by a lot of discussion, and then the last half an hour is just straight out discussion. That's at the Kingston Library, and you can see the event links. We'll also be doing something that's brand new, and I'm doing this with a colleague and one of his colleagues. We're starting a new series partnering with the Kingston Library called Reconsidering. So this month it's going to be Reconsidering Ferguson for Black History Month. And I'll be doing a talk, about 15 minutes portion there, about Martin Luther King and his conception of just and unjust law, and how we ought to understand things like policing, rules and regulations, all that sort of stuff. Some of the other participants are going to talk about other things. There's going to be a big focus on promoting group discussion of these. So the talks are sort of just to give anchor points for the larger discussion. Next month we'll be doing Reconsidering Charlie Hebdo, and we'll be doing more of these Reconsidering each month down the line. That one's going to be on the 18th at the Kingston Public Library at 6 o'clock, ending a little bit before 8 o'clock. Then I'm also going to be doing something quite exciting, my first event in the city, in New York City, which is long overdue. I've been invited down to give a lecture to the Meade Anderson Undergraduate Philosophy Forum at Columbia University. And I'll be talking about Aristotle and anger, and how it is that anger is able to seduce rationality, but also how anger is connected with rationality for Aristotle. So I'll put event information about that. That will be on the 25th of February, which is a Wednesday at 8 p.m. So I'm coming all the way down to the city for that, and I won't be sticking around afterwards. I'll be taking the train back home or getting a ride because I've got to work the next day. But I will be down in the city during that day, probably around the Columbia campus, hanging out with some of the people who are hosting. So, that may be a good opportunity if you've always wanted to meet me and talk with me to do so. I'll be continuing, as I'll probably be doing the rest of my life, my philosophical counseling practice, which is now starting to take off, and tutoring, where we've actually worked out a kind of price arrangement where people can not only go through Google, but also just buy tutoring slots, where I give a price break if you buy 5 hours or 10 hours at a time, depending on what you want to do. So I've got clients, for instance, who want to do a course of study, and I do that with them in order to help them with their lifelong learning or their professional development. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I've got links here for that. Another big thing in February, it's been long awaited, and I have had a number of sort of self-imposed delays, but I finally started teaching the existentialism class for Aplerno that I started developing over a year ago. And we're in the first week of it. We've had a couple meetings by video conference already. The students are exploring the resources and the website that I've put together for them. We've had some great discussions already, and so I'm really looking forward to the next 11 weeks of this class. We're going to be doing Kierkegaard next week, and we're going all the way through to Gabriel Marcel. What else? We've got some major projects and partnerships that we're in discussion about this month, and I don't want to say too much about them quite yet because they could be falling through, but I can tell you about one that took place in part last month, and we're going to be continuing some discussions and work over the coming months. There's a very interesting guy who is bringing out a site called Scholarpreneur. He's an adjunct who is making a living not only adjuncting, but also, self-publishing, developing courses. He works in history, and he's got a really great model, and he's starting a blog, and he's starting, sort of a site and service. So I like what he's doing. I did an interview with him last month, and we're going to keep in touch about that. What else have we got going on? So videos. This is probably the thing that you're most interested in because, you're watching the video channel. Half-hour Hegel series. We are on track to finish up with the section Sense Certainty and to be ready to move into Perception, which is the next section in the Phenomenology of Spirit come March. So actually making some good progress. I'm going to be shooting some existentialism videos, and I'm also going to be revising some of the older existentialism videos where the sound and the lighting isn't quite up to snuff. I'm going to be editing those and improving them and perhaps adding a few things in here and there. But I'm going to be putting the new edited ones into a new channel that I'm starting. And I'm going to wait until they're all in there, and then I'll sort of open it up. But I will be doing some other new work on that. Worldviews and values, I still have a lot of videos that I've been shooting for my current Marist students that I'll be releasing over this month and also into next month. This month I've started releasing some things on Descartes' Discourse on Method, which is always a great text to explore. So that you might find interesting. And since it's Black History Month, I'm actually going to skip ahead to the last set of videos that I'm shooting for the course. I'm going to skip over some of the stuff that's from Descartes to this. And I'm going to release some videos on Martin Luther King's works, Letter from a Birmingham Jail, and the I Have a Dream speech. And then I'm going to start doing some more critical thinking videos. I'm still midway through the fallacies. There's about another 20 or 30 of those that I need to shoot. So I'm going to start getting those back up and running and start thinking about what else should go into the critical thinking channel. Got some more writing projects going on. If you're interested in the kind of work that I do with the blogs, now would be a good time to start checking them out. I usually publicize that on my Google+, on my Facebook page, and my Twitter. But I'll be doing a lot more writing. I'm at work right now on 2 different papers on St. Anselm, both of which are involving a revision process and adding things in. One is still that Cur Deus Homo, Justice Mercy paper. The other one is revising a paper that I gave at a conference several years ago about St. Anselm's moral theory. It's time for me to expand that and start sending that out to other journals for publication. Working on a lot of Aristotle material, mostly centered on Aristotle and anger, but also some other things as well. So I'm doing some work on the Aristotle anger book. I'm doing some work on some Aristotle papers. I'm revising a Hobbes paper for publication that won't be happening this month, but probably will be coming out sometime in the spring. So that's kind of exciting. I'll talk more about that in another one. And I'm still working on this Good Life chapter for this textbook that was proposed, and I'm hoping to get that off my plate very soon. I'm also writing a paper on somebody who I've never written on before, but I've always been quite interested in, and that's Mary Wollstonecraft. I'm interested in virtue ethics, and I'm particularly interested in her conception of virtue. So I'm working on a paper on that I'm hoping to submit to a conference to get accepted. So I'll talk more about that after it's done. So that's what we've got going on in February. You can tell it's quite a bit. Like I said, if you can make the public events, I'd be happy to see you there. And if you're there, stick around afterwards, and I'll chat for a few minutes. At the Kingston ones, I can chat for as long as I like. The New York City one, I'll have to get going soon afterwards. But it's a great opportunity to interact with people who are interested in the kind of work I'm doing. If you're interested in tutoring or philosophical counseling, contact me. Best way to contact me is greg@reasonio.com. And if you're interested in booking me for public speaking or suggesting to somebody else that they should book me for public speaking, I think, if you follow my channel, you know the kind of range of topics that I can cover. You know what I'm like as a public speaker. So, again, same thing with that, greg@reasonio.com. If you've got an invitation for me or if you're suggesting me to somebody, keep me in the loop. So that's it for February and what took place in January. Big month coming up, and so now I got to get to work.